All right, Jason, we're back, and I was talking to you at the top of the episode about this young actress, Judith Barsi, and you said that was a name you had not heard. Have
Nope.
you ever seen? I know this might be a little after your time of your childhood, but have you ever seen All Dogs Go to Heaven?
I've not seen it. I do know of it though.
You know, yeah. So
Yeah.
animated,
Yeah.
Don Bluth.
Yeah. I think the kids have seen it.
Yeah, it is a classic, I think, of that, what about Land Before Time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the first movie I ever saw in the theater, by the way.
And there's the Fievel movies, which
All that stuff. Don
a kid-
Bluth.
yeah, kids cried in the movie theater when Fievel goes missing in the American Tale. Yep.
Yeah. And in the late 80s, there were so many of those by that, Steven Spielberg, Don Bluth, and this team that made all these animated kind of Disney style movies, and they were so good. They were the Pixar of that time, right? Yeah. One that I know you've seen, Jaws: The Revenge. Have you seen that?
I've seen parts.
Yeah,
I tried to get through it.
Yeah, that's not a good one. I
It's
recommend.
not quite Jaws 3D, but it's close.
As I was putting this together, I was thinking about that, and I wanted to bring up. I'm glad you saw that because
with Dennis Quaid, by the way.
yes, but that I wonder what that was like to see in the theater with 3D glasses on. Because when you watch it on TV, the funniest scene probably in movie history, with as far as effects go, special effects, is when Jaws comes smashing through the huge, underwater window, and all the people are and Jaws just slowly comes towards it, and the broken glass that comes towards them in 3D is so hokey looking that I don't know how that movie was ever looked at as scary. Jaws, just watch the first and second one. Anyway,
What's the connection? What's the connection?
The connection to all those movies is they all star Judith Barsi. Little Judith appeared in numerous movies and TV series and over 50 commercials by the time she was 10. But in late July of 1988, Judith, along with her mother, would meet a tragic end at the hands of her own father, cutting her young life and promising career short. So I'm going to tell you about this story. And again, if you've seen any of those children's movies with her or have ever seen anything with her, it kind of changes how you feel when you watch them. Judith Eva Barsi was born June 6, 1978 in LA to Joseph and Maria Barsi, two Hungarian residents that had fled to the U.S. during the 1959 uprising of the Hungarian People's Republic. Joseph and Maria didn't meet until several years after they both arrived in LA. She was a server at a restaurant, and he was a plumber, impressing her with his tall, dark, and handsome appearance. We'll put a picture up. Her words, not mine. But he also impressed her with the fact that he paid for all of his drinks with $100 bills, allegedly. Soon after, the two were married, and little Judith came along. And by the time she was 5 years old, her mother was pushing her to become a star after she'd been discovered while ice skating by a talent scout. At that point, the family was on welfare and collecting food stamps, so it seemed, a solution to their money problems. And I think I read somewhere that she had actually started pushing Judith to get into acting and stuff by the time she was 2. I think it was by the time when she was 5, she actually was discovered, you could say. Judith was a natural with a beautiful face and bubbly, engaging personality. Little blonde hair, blue eyes, just looks like you're, what you think of as just a beautiful child star of the 80s. Yeah. Maria's plan for Judith worked. Within just a few years, Judith was making an average of $100,000 per year and had purchased a new home for her family in West Hills, Los Angeles. Again, she'd starred in over 50 commercials and was taking roles in TV series like Cagney and Lacey, Saint Elsewhere, Little House on the Prairie, and Growing Pains. In 1987, Judith made her film debut in Jaws 4: The Revenge, which she probably would have left off her resume had she lived, because it is such a bad movie.
$100,000 a year
for a 10-year-old.
Look at all the work she had to do to make that money. But $100,000 a year in the 80s, that is a lot. I never imagined that amount of money growing up.
Yeah, for a 10-year-old, it's a lot of money. Yeah. And I don't know, that was what she was averaging. So maybe there were years, I think the final year of her life, she had done several projects, so she probably exceeded that. Wow. But it seems like, I hate to say stage mom with her mother, because I don't have anything bad to say about her mother. It's pushing a child into it when they're two,
Wouldn't be the first time, right?
Certainly not. It won't be the last. While things were going exceptionally well for Judith's career, things at home were not good at all. Joseph was an alcoholic and had become abusive to both Judith and her mother. He was constantly threatening Judith and even said that he would kill her. Another time, he said he would kill her, Maria, her mother, and himself. In December of 1986, Maria had actually reported Joseph to the police, but they did nothing, as there were no physical signs of abuse. Though other instances did result in injuries, like when Joseph threw pots and pans at Judith, giving her a bloody nose. After years of abuse at home and a demanding film schedule, Judith began to show signs that she was troubled, even to people outside of the family and close circle of friends. Because of her film career, she had few friends. She didn't really have any school-age friends. She missed school often because of filming and, would have tutors on set. So she had no one to confide in. And certainly little kids need that. They need somebody to feel safe with. And it sounds like she just didn't have that at home. Her mother had actually at one point rented an apartment to stay at during the daytime as a haven for her and Judith away from Joseph. And when friends told her to leave, she would respond that she'd worked so hard for Judith's career and didn't want to lose the family home and their possessions. I have to think that's probably got something to do with the fact that they were, the way that they came to America, they sort of had to leave everything behind and start over. Now you've got your family home and these things you've worked hard for, or your daughter's worked hard for. There's a part of that I can understand, right?
Yeah, you work hard for everything, and you just, what do you do about it, right? Where do you go? What do you do about it? And
knowing you'd have to start over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, while her mother was the only person that she could confide in, the fact that she wouldn't leave her abusive husband, knowing how he was with Judith, left the little girl with growing anxiety. She began displaying obsessive compulsive behavior like plucking out her own eyelashes and pulling out the cat's whiskers. Finally, Judith broke down and confided in her agent and was taken to a child psychologist. Her agent went to her mother and said, "You need to do this or I'm going to report. Like, you have to take her to a child psychologist." When she went to the child psychologist, after just one session, the psychologist reported the case to CPS, to Child Protective Services. That's how bad it was. However, the case was dropped after Maria assured the caseworker that she was going to begin the process of divorcing Joseph and move into the apartment that she had rented in Panorama City, the one that was sort of the safe haven. Yeah. In the end, Maria decided against divorcing her husband and moving out. It was later revealed by neighbors that she had confided in that Joseph had threatened to cut their throats and burn down the house if she ever did leave him. So I could see by the look on your face that you were sort of, as I was looking into this, for me, that was the point where it's like, now you have CPS involved. Here's your out. Why would you not leave? And she, that at that point, I was like, this woman, and I'm feeling like mad at her.
Well, and especially like Judith could be, she's a well-known star,
right?
Is that it could be two things, right? One, we don't want to let anyone know that this is happening. But the other side of it is she's got protection from the industry. If this comes out, that people would be behind her and she'd be safe. What do you do about that, right? Do you try to sweep it under the rug, or do you embrace the potential help that you might get?
Right. And, but then, of course, you learn that the husband, Joseph is making these, literally saying, I'll cut the throats of my 10-year-old daughter and my wife and burn the house down. And that wasn't just a one-time thing. I read that, friends would say he was not shy about being verbally abusive or threatening to Judith, at like a barbecue, at like a neighborhood barbecue or at a friend's or family member's house. I mean, and you have to wonder why someone didn't step in and I mean, people obviously were telling Maria to leave this guy, but you hear about stories and you know how this ends. It just makes you so like, you don't want to be nosy. You don't want to get in people's business. But when you see something like that, it's not right. Something is wrong for sure behind closed doors. And what's your obligation as a person,
Have you followed this recent Texas story? The woman, Suzanne Simpson, that got into an argument with her husband and all of that. If you haven't, look it up. I actually have a very good friend of mine who is friends with her. And this happened in real time about a week or two ago. And I just saw him and he's like, I just found out that she's missing and that this stuff happened. And like all this, I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's crazy, but it's very personal when you're like, wow, this shit's happening to a friend of mine. Yeah. Which is why I'm not going to talk about it, but just like it is, I've been thinking about him and about this case for the last couple of weeks now. And I turned on ABC News the other night and they were talking about it, like on the the nightly news. I'm like,
yeah, that's
what
you
seeing this.
You got to remember that all these stories that we talk about, all the stories that you read or hear about, it hits home for somebody. There's always a friend or a family member of a victim. There's always, not just the victim isn't the only one affected in some true crime story. I mean, there's the other people that know them and care about them that are affected too. So by July of 1988, Judith had wrapped The Land Before Time, voicing the character of Ducky, which, Ducky has that famous tagline, yep, yep, yep. Do you remember that? Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Cute.
Yeah, it's really cute. Super, super cute. Really cute movie. I still love it. She had voiced the main character also of Anne Marie in All Dogs Go to Heaven alongside Burt Reynolds. And if I know you've not seen it, but Anne Marie is a little orphan and, all the dogs, she is rescued sort of by all these dogs. Burt Reynolds voices Charlie, the German Shepherd. And she, they just fall in love and she's just this little orphan that's cute. At this time, Maria had planned, allegedly, to finally leave Joseph by cashing Judith's $12,000 tax refund check before her husband could get it. On July 25th, 1988, at approximately 8:30 a.m., the Barsi's neighbor, Eunice Daly, was watering her garden when she heard a gunshot. She then saw smoke rising from the house, and in an interview with the LA Times stated, "He'd done it. He's killed them and set fire in the house just as he said he would." That was her first thought when she heard this gunshot and saw smoke. Another neighbor attempted to use Daly's garden hose to extinguish the fire, but couldn't because the smoke was already too thick. When the fire was put out and the smoke finally cleared, police discovered the bodies of Judith, Maria, and József Barsi inside the house. Joseph had shot Maria in the head as she lay in the hallway, and she laid in the hallway, and had shot Judith in the head while she lay in her bed asleep. He wandered around in the home for 2 days by himself before dousing Judith and Maria with gasoline and setting them on fire. He then went into the garage and shot himself in the head with the same .32 caliber pistol that he had killed his wife and daughter with.
Wow. That shocks me. That is...
It's... yeah, I mean... And apparently he had even spoken to, during that 2-day period, he had spoken to a neighbor. I don't know if he had come out of the house or spoken to someone on the phone, but said that he was finally going to leave, allow her the divorce or whatever, and he just needed a little more time to say goodbye to his baby girl. That was the quote that I read. And so during that time, he's in this house alone with, it's so horrible. I am a bleeding heart, when it comes to anything happening to kids. I mean, I just am. I've always been that way. Kids are so, oftentimes so innocent and just so unaware of what is really happening and going on around them. Even when it's happening to them, the abuse, a lot of times they don't know that it truly is wrong, or and so when you have something like this happen, it's just, you have to say it was up to the mother to protect her child, and in this situation she had to have been terrified of her husband, and maybe she thought staying with him was the best way she could protect herself and her daughter, and it just ended up this way, and it's
terrible, and
it's heartbreaking. Shooting
your kid in the head. I mean,
while they're sleeping. Yeah. It's really, really terrible. Both The Land Before Time and All Dogs Go to Heaven were released after Barsi's death, and the films were dedicated to her. She received high praise for her performance in both films, and producer Don Bluth said he had planned to feature her in more of his films because of her, quote, astonishing ability to understand direction, even in the most sophisticated situations. Heartbroken over her death, Bluth asked that the character of Anne-Marie's mannerisms and design be based off of Judith to honor her. So if you do see that movie or a clip from that movie, and just the way she moves and sort of runs around in the movie is actually based off of her. I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah.
Her gravestone features the line "Yep, yep, yep" from Ducky,
really?
From the Ducky character. Yeah. The saddest, not the saddest, that's the wrong way to say this, but when I learned about this is kind of something that stuck with me. And I actually went back and watched this scene that I'm going to talk about to see, well, after you hear it, you may want to go watch that too. Maybe we can post a link of it. When Burt Reynolds learned of Judith's murder, he hadn't recorded his final lines for the character of Charlie for All Dogs Go to Heaven, and that is the scene in which Charlie gets called away to heaven and says a tearful goodbye to Anne-Marie. He struggled to record the lines, needing over 70 takes to do it, as he continually broke down in tears. He asked for a closed sound booth with only him and the audio engineer present. You can hear Reynolds' voice cracking in the final scenes, particularly in the lines, "I'll miss you too, Squeaker," which is what he called little Anne-Marie in the movie, and "I'll love you too." And he says those two lines, and if maybe, like I said, maybe we can post a link, but just, if not, Google, Charlie's goodbye scene, All Dogs Go to Heaven. Knowing this, and you see that, you really do hear that sadness in his voice. It is really sad. I watched it the other day as I was putting this together after I finished, and it kind of stuck with me. That's what I was saying. I think you see these movies and not knowing what this poor little girl was going through at home, and just the way it ended, and the final thing, Burt Reynolds asked to redo his final line, "Goodbye isn't forever," while looking at a photo of Judith. You picture, Burt Reynolds is this tough guy, man. I mean, 70s and 80s, he's
Mr. Macho.
Mr. Macho. And
Smoking the Bandit, right?
Yeah, all that. White Lightning, all these classic tough guy movies, Did you know any of that?
I knew none of that, and I actually pride myself on knowing a whole lot about pretty much everything that's ever happened in movie and television, especially the 80s and 90s. And I had not even heard of this. So it's new to me, but it's also, I mean, it's shocking and heartbreaking what the result is.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not any kind of good ending on that. I mean, it's no real reason why Joseph did this. There was no suicide note. He never confided in anyone. It was just threats. Alcoholism played a large role in it. Could it have been his upbringing in Hungary? Could it have, who knows?
Yeah.
But he was apparently just a very controlling, very threatening, abusive person. And I don't know.
And the whole family's gone. The whole family is gone now.
Yeah. And not only a promising career that was ended short, but this little girl, 10 years old and a horrible ending to a young life. So that's it. I'm Sean Kipe here with Jason Hoke. Hope you enjoyed the episode. That's how it all went south. We'll see you next time.